Welcome aboard. Welcome to today's tour. Today's tour is actually a revisit. We are returning to a site we visited once already, but today we're in a slower, smaller plane and we may even attempt to land there. Today we return to the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant, or Chernobyl in Ukraine, the site of the world's worst nuclear disaster. I will get the plane started, get the cockpit set up, we will take a look around the airport, take a look at our flight plan, and we will be on our way. Let's fly. Today we are at the Boryspil Airport, airport code UKBB. The airport is about 18 miles east of Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine, and it's the country's largest airport.
Altimeter 29.902. ILS runway 36 right and ILS runway 36 left in use. Landing and departing runway 36 right and runway 36 left. VFR aircraft say direction of flight. All aircraft read back hold short instructions. Advise controller on initial contact you have whiskey.
Dude 005, cleared to Boryspil Airport as filed. Takeoff runway 18 left climb and maintain 3,000 feet. Departure on 135.45 squawk 4011.
Dude 005, read back correct. Contact ground on 118.05.
Boryspil ground, Dude 005 with whiskey ready to taxi IFR.
Dude 005 taxi to and hold short of runway 18 left via taxiway Bravo Delta Alpha. Contact tower on 119.3 when ready.
Taxiing hold short runway 18 left via taxiway Bravo Delta Alpha Dude 005.
A quick look here at the airport, the Kiev Boryspil Airport. You can see that our desired course is to the northwest of a heading roughly 327 degrees. That will take us on a direct track to the power plant. The return trip, we will be returning to the same airport today, although we have one waypoint in our flight plan, which should put us in a better approach angle for the airport, and that is the TUVOG waypoint. From there, 177 degree heading should put us in line with the airport, depending upon which approach we have, and that should return us back to where we start. If this is your first time joining me, welcome aboard. What we do is find interesting places to visit and visit them here in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Today we are flying the Cessna Skyhawk. The last time we visited the Chernobyl site, we were in the Cessna Grand Caravan, the 208B, which is a little bit larger and a little bit faster. So I'm thinking today with a smaller, slower aircraft, we'll get a better look at the site and maybe try to land there. Early on April 26, 1986, at the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant in the Ukraine, which was formerly part of the Soviet Union, there was an explosion which many consider the worst nuclear disaster the world has ever seen. The nuclear power plant itself is located about 81 miles, 130 kilometers north of the city of Kiev, Ukraine, and about 12 miles, 20 kilometers south of the border with Belarus. It's made up of 4 reactors that were designed and built during the 1970s and 1980s. The site also has a man-made reservoir. It's roughly 8.5 square miles or 22 square kilometers in size, and the water is fed by the Pripyat River, which was created to provide cooling water for the reactors. Also nearby was the city of Pripyat, which was the nearest town to the power plant, just under 2 miles away. And that town is what housed most of the 50,000 people that lived there in 1986. There, of course, is also a smaller, older town nearby, Chernobyl, and that was about 9 miles or 15 kilometers away, and that was home to about 12,000 residents at the time. And the surrounding area outside of those 2 towns was mostly farms or woodland. The plant itself was made up of 4 Soviet RBMK-1000 nuclear reactors. And that's a design that pretty much now is just considered to be inherently flawed. The reactors were a pressure tube design that used enriched U-235 uranium dioxide fuel to heat the water, which creates steam and then drives the reactor's turbines. And that's what generates electricity. In most nuclear reactors, water is used as a coolant to moderate the reactivity of the nuclear core by simply removing excess heat and steam. However, these reactors used graphite to moderate the core's reactivity and to keep a continuous nuclear reaction occurring in the core. So what actually happened at their Chernobyl nuclear power plant in 1986? Being one of, if not the worst nuclear disaster in history, the events leading up to and the causes have been analyzed in great depth by experts around the world. But the general timeline is this. On April 25th, 1986, at about 1 a.m., Chernobyl's operators begin reducing power at reactor number 4 in preparation for a safety test. This test they have timed to coincide with a routine shutdown of the reactor for maintenance. The test is supposed to determine whether, in the event of a power failure, can the plant's still spinning turbines produce enough electricity to keep the coolant pumps running. Will they run during this brief gap before the emergency generators turn on? April 25th, at about 2 p.m., reactor number 4's emergency core cooling system is disabled to keep it from interfering with the test. That sounds like a bad idea already. Though it doesn't cause the accident, it's definitely going to worsen the impact. At around the same time, the test and shutdown are temporarily delayed to accommodate the region's power needs. April 25th, at 11:10 p.m., the operators finally received permission to continue with the test and the shutdown. But, by now, a less experienced night shift is on the job, which purportedly never received proper instructions on how to even perform this test. April 26th, at 12:28 a.m., the power at the plant drops far below the level at which the reactor is considered stable. The operators respond by removing most of the control rods in violation of what is the plant's safety guidelines. And what these control rods really are usually rods or plates containing material such as boron, and they're used in a nuclear reactor by absorbing neutrons, and it prevents the neutrons from causing further reaction, so it's a way to slow or stop the reaction. April 26th at 1 a.m., with the power now stabilized, although at a lower than preferred level, the plant supervisors order the test to proceed, so the automatic emergency shutdown system and other safety features are subsequently turned off. About 40 seconds later, an operator presses the emergency shutdown button, but the control rods fail to enter the core completely. Because the operators had pulled the control rods out further than they normally would, the power level did return to what they needed for the test, but unfortunately this exposed a design flaw in these Chernobyl reactors. This flaw led to water being able to boil in certain locations of the reactor, and that in turn caused this power instability that the operators were seeing now. The emergency shutdown sequence that they had started, I believe is referred to as SCRAM, which is the emergency shutdown sequence by injecting these control rods into the core. And based on the design of these reactors, when these control rods were reinserted, it caused a power surge. The resulting interaction from the very hot fuel and the cooling water led to rapid steam production and increase in pressure. This buildup in pressure caused the 1,000-ton plate on the top of the reactor to become partially detached and ruptured the fuel channels and jamming all the control rods, which prevented the control rods from fully entering the core. This then led to steam generation that spread throughout the whole core. At 1:23 and 58 seconds, the actual first explosion happened, and this was quickly followed by at least one more, which finally blew the 1,000-ton roof off of the reactor. This sends that fireball high into the night sky, and a blackout rolls through the plant as the air fills with dust and graphite chunks and radiation begins spewing out. Multiple fires break out, including one on the roof of the nearby reactor number 3. At 1:28 a.m., the first firefighters arrive at the scene, and they have no idea that the radiation is so high and that they should be wearing protective clothing. And at 5 a.m., the officials finally shut down Reactor 3, followed the next morning by reactors number 1 and 2. By 6:30 a.m., most of the small fires had been extinguished, and all that was left was the major blaze burning in the reactor core. And this fire would go on to burn for days. The following day, April 27th at 2 p.m., after initially telling the residents nothing about the disaster for 36 hours, the local officials finally began evacuating people from Pripyat, as well as the other nearby towns and villages. The residents were informed originally that it's just temporary and only take what you would need for a few days and you will be returning soon. This, however, turned out to not be the case, and there would be an exclusion zone set up around Chernobyl that would prevent any of their return. We are over the site of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in 1986. The rendering here in Flight Simulator isn't perfect, but you can definitely see where the structure is located that covers Reactor 4, where that fire and explosion took place. Just past the site, we will be flying over what was the evacuated town of Pripyat, and this is all part of what is now the exclusion zone. And initially there was little or no information being released about the accident from the Soviet Union. On April 28th, Swedish air monitors detected a large amount of radiation in the atmosphere. They traced this back to the USSR, and the Soviet officials finally admitted that there had been an accident. It would take over 10 days and 250 firefighters to finally extinguish the graphite-fueled fire at Reactor 4. The radioactivity from the event was spread by wind over Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine, and it reached as far west as France and Italy. Millions of acres of forests and farmlands were contaminated. Following the disaster, the Soviet Union created a circle-shaped exclusion zone with a radius of about 18.6 miles or 30 kilometers centered on the nuclear power plant. The exclusion zone covered an area of about 1,017 square miles or 2,634 square kilometers around the plant. However, it was later expanded to 1,600 square miles, 4,143 square kilometers. In the following years, up to 220,000 people will be either relocated or advised to move from the area. Once the fire had been extinguished, the goal was to now contain the radiation. The shelter they were going to build was going to be a concrete shelter to enclose Reactor 4, and it was known as a sarcophagus. And between June and November of that year, it was constructed over the reactor. Between 2009 and 2019, a new shelter was built. It's the new safe confinement shelter, and this was built to encase reactor number 4, as well as the original shelter that was built immediately after the disaster. Probably ill-advised, but let's try to set this plane down on the ground here and take a look around. What could possibly go wrong? Not a terrible landing, considering we have no runway and we are in a radioactive exclusion zone. As I mentioned, the model here in Flight Sim isn't perfect, but you definitely can get a sense of where the reactors are and where the structure is that enclosed reactor number 4. I suppose we should get on our way before officials realize we're here in the exclusion zone without permission. Let's get this plane in the air and head back to Kiev. Following the disaster, the remaining 3 units would actually be brought back into operation. Unit 2 would run until 1991, Unit 1 would run until 1996, and the final last unit number 3 would run until December 15th of 2000. And that is the site of the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant. Our second visit, we went back this time with a smaller plane, the Cessna 172, so that we could land and take a better look around. I don't think we were on the ground long enough to absorb too much radiation, but it is all part of the exclusion zone. take a look at our flight path back. We will make this quick so we can get back to Kiev and get this plane on the ground. The waypoint we chose today did set us up for the airport, although they have us doing an approach from the south, so it looks like we're going to do a little downwind leg here, make a turn, come back to the airport for our landing.
Dude 005 cleared to land runway 36 right. Wind 263 at tree.
Cleared to land runway 36 right, dude 005.
Make sure your seatbelts are fastened because, as you know, my landings can be rough. While we make our final approach, it would be great if you could hit that subscribe button. It really does help the channel and I greatly appreciate it. We should be on the ground shortly.
Good evening. There has been a nuclear accident in the Soviet Union, and the Soviets have admitted that it happened. The Soviet version is this. One of the atomic reactors at the Chernobyl atomic power plant near the city of Kiev was damaged, and there is speculation in Moscow that people were injured and may have died. The Soviets may have been fairly quick to acknowledge the accident because evidence in the form of mild nuclear radiation had already reached beyond the Soviet borders to Scandinavia. We begin with ABC's Dean Reynolds.
The first word that something was seriously wrong came from this power plant in eastern Sweden, where workers coming on the job registered abnormally high levels of radiation on their bodies. Although the levels were not high enough to harm humans and no accident had occurred at that plant, it was shut down. And as tests were conducted, similar puzzling reports of high radiation came in from all over Scandinavia. But still, no accidents were reported, leading to the conclusion that the problem was elsewhere, to the east, in the Soviet Union. A fact confirmed to the Soviet people on television tonight.
We are on the ground. We are back here at the Kiev Boryspil Airport. We will find a place to park the plane, get it shut down, maybe do an extra cleaning to cleanse off the radioactive material from our visit today to the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant, the site of what is considered the world's worst nuclear disaster. Thanks for joining me today. Check out more tours below and be on the lookout for upcoming tours. Hope you enjoyed the flight and the conversation today. If you have any comments or corrections, by all means, leave them in a comment below. What we talked about today is just from my own personal research. If you have an idea for an interesting place to fly to and talk about, please leave a comment below. Looks like the ground crew has a very specific place they want me to park the aircraft today. Oh boy, it looks like it's a containment area. They must know where we came from. We might be in trouble.